Alright, so last time we talked about how the first fundamental part of what Roblox is about is changing the properties of objects. Okay, and we learned how we can change the properties of objects through the property window and how we can do it in code. Okay, and we saw that the programming constructs like the while loop and the for loop can be used to change, the properties of things while the game is running, right? So last time we had something like this, and then we had something like this. So I wanted to change the transparency of a part to 1, and then wait a second, change it to 2, or change it to 0, and then wait a second. Okay, and so and we saw that how there's a lot more properties. Okay, so it's transparency, brick color, and they all have their own way of being changed. Okay, so Roblox does not keep it consistent how we can change these properties, but if we ever wanted to learn how we could change one of these properties, we saw that we can simply click on the developer hub page, right, for the object, and I can just click on its property and see how it can be changed. But right now we have no way of changing a property when a certain action occurs in a game. So maybe I don't want to change the transparency of this part on a loop. Maybe I only want to do it when it's touched by a player. Okay, or maybe I want to change this part when I click on something. When I click on this part, I want to change its color. Okay, so we need a way for actions in game to trigger some code to be run. Okay, and the programming term for this is called an event. Okay, so I need a way to program and listen for events in my game. Okay, so one really common event that you might use in many projects is the touched event. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and make this my variables. Okay, and then I'm gonna add a comment for events, and then a comment for functions. Okay, so let's say I want to have a function called make invisible. Okay, and let's make a bit of a game here. So let's say I'm gonna have a game where when a player steps on a part, okay, after 1 second the part's gonna vanish. Okay, and the player has to quickly jump off of it. Okay, well, let me just work on the one for now, and I'm gonna call this part vanishing part. Okay, all right, so the only thing this function is going to do, what's going to do two things. It's one, it's going to make the, or let me change the name of this variable. So we're going to make the transparency of the vanishing part 1, and we're going to make the can collide of the vanishing part false. Okay. And so the first thing that we're going to do, or the last thing we need to do, is connect this function to our event. Okay. So before we would just be putting this function in a loop, right? But loops are not interactive. This loop will do something on its own regardless of what actions are going on in the game. Okay, I'd rather have an event listen for something to happen and then run the function. Okay, and so now I'm going to say vanishing part dot touched. Okay, so notice when I put this dot here, okay, we saw from last video that we could see all the properties of our object. Okay, the properties are these blue cubes here. Okay, but the events of our object are the lightning symbols. Okay, so an event can be triggered when something is touched. Okay, an event can be triggered when a property of the part is changed. An event can be triggered when if this part's ancestry changes. So if its parent is workspace and then changes to server storage, that will even trigger an event. Okay, so there's lots of cool events that we have here. Okay, but we're going to focus on touched. And I want to connect a function to it. So to connect it, all we need to do is use this syntax. So I'm going to say colon and then connect. Okay, and then open parentheses, close parentheses. Okay, and so now I just need to put the name, only the name of a function in here. So I'm going to put the name make invisible. Okay, all right. I did not autocomplete it, or actually, okay. Sometimes when you autocomplete, it will call the function here. Okay, we don't want to call the function here. Because then the function is going to return void, and so we're basically connecting void. We just want to connect to the name of the function. And so now, okay, so let me anchor this. Okay, if I step on this, it vanishes only when it's touched. Okay, but it doesn't come back though. So maybe after a few seconds I want this to come back. Okay, so maybe I'll make another function called make visible. Okay, and it's going to do the exact opposite of this. All right. So, but here's the problem. I can only connect one function at a time. Okay, so because of this, I can make another function that involves these two functions in the same one. Okay, so I'm going to make a function called make visible, or make invisible, then visible. Okay, so kind of verbose, but it's fine. So now we're going to make the part invisible, and we're going to wait 1 second and then make the part visible. Okay, and so instead of connecting make invisible, I'm just going to connect make invisible then visible. All right, and so if I play here, all right. So it vanishes and comes back after I touch it, which is really cool. All right, so now I'm going to duplicate this, okay, and the code will work for all of them. All right, and we already have a pretty fun game here, okay? So this is, okay, the second key of Roblox development, okay? So the first is understanding that every object has properties that can be changed, okay? And number two is every object has things that they listen for, okay? So these are another term for events is also called event listeners. Okay, so if I did not have this event here, okay, then this part would not listen for its being touched. Okay, so every object has things that they listen, or every object has things that they wait for things to happen in a game, and they could be different, and some of them could be the same. And if I ever forget what things that a part listens for, okay, I can scroll down, okay, to the events of the object here. Okay, so I'm at the section called events, and I see that it has something called touched and touch ended. Okay. All right. So so now we know how to make things happen when something is touched. Okay. But let's say I also want information on the thing that triggered the event. Okay. So if I want access to this, okay, these event listeners actually pass this information into the function. So this information is actually passed into the function that we're connecting. Okay, so I can get access to it by just making a parameter for it. So I'm gonna say part that, or so when two things come into contact, okay, we always have access to the first thing, okay, because we defined a variable for it. So this is the first thing that got into contact. The second thing is the other part. So we're just gonna say other object. Okay. All right. And so now now I have access to this. So let's say I wanted to destroy this part. Okay. So we know that every part has a function or method, okay, called the destroy. Okay, so if I ever forgot that, I could go to the functions of the part and search for a function that removes it from the game. Okay, so we have this right here. And so now let's say I want to, okay, or let me just make a new function and connect the new one. So function destroy okay, and so now this is calling the destroy function of the other object. Remember, we have to use the colon when using functions of the objects Roblox creates. And so now I'm going to connect burn other part. Okay, so now what script is this? It's this one. If I step on this part, oh, all of my parts got deleted. Okay, because my leg stepped on there and then the rest of my body. All right, so that's pretty cool. So now, we might want to do other things with the other part. Maybe I want to damage the person's health. Okay, damage the character's health. Okay, we can do this by understanding what is the ancestry of the character look like. Okay, so what I mean by this is, like, if I add in the I can add in if I go to my plugins tab, I can add in a dummy that looks like a character in Roblox. Okay, and so if I look at the children of the dummy, okay, the children of the dummy are all of the limbs. Okay, so when this dummy comes into contact with this part, okay, it's these limbs that are coming in contact. Okay, well, how do I decrease the health of a character? What property can I change? And we need to understand that every character has something called a humanoid. Okay, and this humanoid has a property called health. Okay, so if I make this 50, okay. Oh. Okay, usually this should be decreasing a little GY above his head, but I guess that's not working right now. Anyways, this is how we can change the health of a character. But the humanoid is not a physical part, so I'm never going to get the humanoid from this parameter. Okay, it's always going to be one of his limbs. Okay, but since this is a sibling of the humanoid, I know that the humanoid will always be equal to a limb. So I can say humanoid is going to equal to other object dot parent. Okay, because the parent of any of his limbs is the character, and then dot humanoid. Okay, well, I need to make since this is a variable is inside the function, I need to make I need to put local here. So now I need to then change the health property of this humanoid. Okay, and so now let me change the name of this function to burn other character now. And so I'm going to say humanoid dot health. Okay, I want it to be equal to how much health it currently has minus some number. So so humanoid dot health minus 20. Okay, so the first time the character touches this part, he will have 100. So 100 minus 20 will be 80, and the second time it'll keep going down. So we're going to connect burn other character. So now okay, now I'm slowly getting damaged. Okay, every time I was touching this platform. Okay, so I basically made lava. Okay, that time I instantly died because I actually touched like multiple of my body parts touched the part at the same time. So I took 20 for each of those. But yeah, so now now as if I'm waiting, if I'm expecting a certain thing to touch or trigger this event, okay, so like I'm expecting a person's limb to touch this part, and I'm only expecting a person's limbs. Okay, so I'm not expecting any so these parts right here, okay, they do not have humanoids. Okay, so if I move this here, okay, nothing's gonna happen because this part is not a character. Okay, so it's not gonna have a humanoid in it. So when we create events, okay, we have to make some assumptions about what's gonna come into contact with or what's gonna trigger the event. Okay, so I'm assuming that the other object is gonna belong to a person's limb. Okay, and to even like to reinforce this assumption, I might even name this parameter a body part. Okay, just to reinforce that I'm assuming that it's a character's limb is coming into contact. And so so that's something we have to keep in mind. Okay, is we need to really like visualize what is going to be triggering our event. Okay, and so on the developer hub page, if I ever want to see what event triggers are passed into the function I connect, okay, Roblox always lists it in the parentheses of the event here. Okay, so the other part is passed when something is touched or something stops touching the other part. Okay. So yeah, that is events. Okay, and so there's all kinds of events. There's events that get playered when a person enters the game, when a person leaves the game. There's events that are triggered when someone clicks on a part. Okay, there's many really cool events, and that a lot of my other videos showcase those events. Okay, but the Roblox journey involves figuring out what objects do I want to change the properties of, and how do I want to change them? Do I want to change them in loops, or do I just want to change them one time, or do I want to change them when something happens in the game? And I lost my train of thought. Okay, but that is event listeners. One thing I did not really go too much in depth with is functions of objects. Okay, but all you gotta know is if there's a function that, okay, okay, so basically whenever I get I want to put a feature into my game, I think, like, so if I ever use the words like I want this to happen when X happens, like X being an event that happens in the game, then I know I need an event. Like whenever a student or me for myself in my development, whenever I phrase something like I want something to happen when this happens, okay, you 90% of the time probably gonna need to use an event. Okay, so then all you're thinking about is what object has the event I need. Okay, so if I want something to trigger when I click on something, okay, well, we saw that there are no events for parts that involve clicking. Okay, all right, but there is an object called a click detector. Okay, now this guy has an event called mouse click. Okay, all right, and if I play the game, I have no code connecting the event to any function, so me clicking on it doesn't do anything. Okay, but that's a perfect example of thinking I want to do something when this is clicked. Okay, so that keys me in that I need an event for that. And then, but for the functions of objects, okay, a lot of these functions of objects you're not going to use. Okay, but there is some behavior, okay, of objects that, okay, like we can't get just by changing their properties. Okay, so we can get it by calling the functions of these objects here. Okay, and it's honestly more rare that you'll use the functions of objects. Okay, but in my previous videos, you'll see two that I use a lot. Okay, is that every object has a function called destroy, and every object has a function called clone. Okay, so many times we'll want to remove an object from the game after we don't need it anymore, and many times we'll want to duplicate an object. Okay, and I can get the duplicate. Okay, so we see here that the clone function. Where's the clone function? Okay, the clone function, okay, returns. So the return type of the functions are put over here. Returns the copy, so I need to make a variable equal to it, and then destroy doesn't return or take anything in it. And so then I just need to put it in workspace, okay, or else we won't see it. Okay, and I can make like a while loop. okay, that constantly clones it's going to constantly clone this vanishing part, okay, and then it's going to wait like maybe 1 second. All right, and then I'm going to unanchor this. Oh wait. Oh, I destroy it before I clone it. Alright, so oh, oops. Game.workspace. The game does not have a parent. Alright. Alright, so what's actually happening is when it when it clones the part, it starts cloning when it clones the part, it has a script in it that also clones itself, so it keeps cloning the clone. So we don't want to do that. We just want to or once we clone it, we could say myClone.script is going to be so just this scripts have a property called disabled, and we can set this to true. And so in that way, the clones don't start duplicating themselves. All right. Yeah, that is okay. The fundamentals of Roblox. Okay, so every object has properties, functions, and events. Okay, usually for functions, we mainly care about the clone and the destroy function, and we need to see if the feature we want to make is one that requires an event based on how we phrase it. Okay. All right.